One of the things that I absolutely love about this season is all of the fall-inspired videos that we're seeing online, whether it's fall foods, or decor, or just real cozy vibes. But the biggest problem is that I'm heading into spring, so it doesn't really fit. Over here in New Zealand, the weather is getting warmer, spring is definitely springing, which means that hay fever season is upon us, and I'm getting major FOMO from seeing all of the fall-inspired goodness online. For that reason, I figured I would bring fall to my journal for the month ahead, and I also figured that given November is going to be particularly busy, I was going to try and get as much set up as I could in advance. To make that as easy as possible, I did decide to restructure my setup a little compared to some of the previous months I've had. But the first layout we're setting up here on the left-hand page is essentially like a monthly dashboard, but a kind of more simple and decorative one. Rather than going with what I've done previously for dashboard layouts and do a whole bunch of different modules or sections for tracking different aspects that are going to happen in the month ahead, I really just wanted this to almost be kind of like a table of contents of the goals and projects I'm going to be working on across the month. This was in part because I wanted to play around a little more with the decorative elements, but also because by having this decorative page, it meant that the placement of the subsequent ones were going to be in suitable positions. When it comes to pre-planning my layouts before I put them into my notebook, I do like to make sure that everything has the space it needs, and there's not really a lot of wasted space, so I figured that for that little bit of additional space I was going to have otherwise, I just deal with it up front and put in this decorative splash page. You could kind of think of it as a monthly cover page, though technically speaking I don't do monthly planning, and thus this list says this cycle rather than this month or November. Even though I've kind of done away with monthly cover pages in the last year or so, I figured that this was actually a really nice balance between something that kind of leans a little more decorative, but also has a function. It's here as a reminder of the things I want to work on across the next 4 weeks, but it also means that I can play around a little more with the papers and stickers that I'm using to do decoration throughout all of the setup. As you can see, the main goals that I've listed out here are the Notion recipe book, Korea trip planning, Christmas planning, Vlogmas, a digital declutter, and the mini moon. And each of these is also going to have its own dedicated layouts in this setup. In terms of timing though, from first to final touches, this page took about 8.5 minutes to set up, though that time doesn't include pre-planning or making and printing off the headers that I'm using on every single page. These ones are in the font Mystical Woods Smooth, which has kind of become one of my go-to lettering styles to use in my journal setups. I like that it's quite bold, so it stands out compared to the rest of my regular writing, and it's also not the kind of lettering style that's super specific to a particular type of theme. So while I could have gone with a lettering style that was a little bit more specifically autumnal leaning, I thought this was a nice style that was still decorative, but also something that was kind of comfortable for its familiarity. In terms of the right-hand page though, this one took about 5.5 minutes to set up, and this is going to be a space to outline all of the tasks that I need to do in working on my Notion recipe book and planning for our Korea trip. When it comes to setting up spaces in my journal that are dedicated to the different goals or projects that I'm working on, sometimes they don't really need anything all that special, and in the case of these two projects, it's really just a task list that captures everything I need to do so I can check them off and use that as a measure of the progress that I'm making. I figured that the Korea trip would probably have less steps than the recipe book, so I've made that section a little bit smaller and also included some decoration down in the bottom right hand corner just to add some visual interest and also kind of maintain the theme throughout all of the pages. One of the things that I get kind of particular about when it comes to my setups is that everything feels matchy-matchy, everything feels very cohesive and like all those layouts belong together, because from past experience, I know that if I set something up in a slightly different theme or it doesn't look like it fits with the rest of the layouts, I will just ignore that layout, and then the thing that I'm trying to organize either won't get done or won't get done in a timely manner, and in general it just has a negative impact for me. But it's all good because this layout has been safeguarded, it matches the cover page and the rest of the setup, so it's time to turn on over and get setting up for the next project I'm going to be working on, which is preparing everything for Christmas. Yes, indeed, Christmas is coming, and I have done very little to prepare anything towards it, especially given that Christmas with my family in particular is happening kind of towards the start of December, rather than the typical December 25th. I do want to be thinking about that sooner rather than later, just to make sure that if there's anything I need to get or anything that I need to prepare, and I need to wait on shipping times or anything like that, I give myself the maximum possible amount of time to get that stuff sorted, or at least the maximum that's left, because Christmas is coming. As we go through these layouts though, obviously not everybody celebrates Christmas. Not everybody is planning a trip to Korea, and not everybody is making a Notion recipe book. So I always hope in these videos that you're not looking at the layouts going, oh, well, this isn't relevant relevant to me, this isn't something I need or something I celebrate, but something that I like to do when I watch other people's plan with me content is kind of just consider the structure of the layout without any of the headers. So thinking about the structure we're setting up here, what kind of projects are you organizing, or different areas of your life you're trying to organize information for, could benefit from having this kind of modular structure, having separate task lists or boxes for different pieces of information. Mine has a section to outline my family Christmas versus Vogel's family Christmas and what we're going to be doing for those things, a spot to write out general tasks for both Christmas celebrations, and also a gift plan at the bottom, that one being done more as a table than just a simple list. And then at the top of the right hand page I have a shopping list for anything I might need to purchase. In particular I'm thinking non-gift items because I'll already have that in the gift plan, but possibly foodie bits, decorations, or anything like that. Sure, I'm using this setup for Christmas, but maybe you could use it for a different type of celebration, or it could be used for general event planning, or essentially anything else if you remove the headers that I've used and put in ones that are more suitable for whatever you're organizing. Another thing that I was trying to be mindful of as I was setting these layouts up is that not everything that I need to organize requires a full page or a full spread. For instance, in terms of my Christmas organization, I really just needed a page and a quarter, but I don't want to just waste the rest of the space. Instead, I decided to put in a section called Life Lists, and this is where I'm going to be listing out things that I want to make in my Notion second brain to help me out in life in general. Things like a prompt list for doing a brain dump, or a master packing list, or a master grocery list. Any kind of reference material that would make life easier, or essentially anytime a scenario came up that it would be nice to start from not zero, having something to start with. Like yes, anytime I go traveling, I can make a packing list from scratch, and quite often I do, but I want to do future Jess the favor of not having to start from zero, not having to start from scratch. She already has a list of the most common items she would pack when going away, and also if I do a thorough job of that, it means I'm less likely to forget things when I'm packing. Given that we have the upcoming mini moon and the Korea trip, one of my life lists is definitely going to be a master packing list, but I'd be curious to know what kind of lists or templates or kind of references might be helpful for you to have, because I will definitely use it as inspiration as I go and populate my life lists. Let me know what you reckon in the comments. I'm thinking that I will probably have the master packing list, maybe a master grocery list, definitely a spark or a trigger list, which is for brain dumping and getting all your thoughts out of your head, and probably also a wish list of social experiences that I want to try, whether that's events that I want to have with my friends or experiences that I want to have with them, but that's also another fun project that I'm looking forward to working on. I did totally forget to add the live lists to my mini contents table on the first page, but this spread took about 13 minutes to set up, again with that time being from first to final touches of the pen and not including the pre-planning, because I do spend a decent amount of time pre-planning my layouts. Pretty much wherever possible, I like to go into setting up my layouts, or like hitting record to set them up, with a full plan of what I'm going to be doing. So where am I going to put my lists, or my tables, or my decoration? Where should my line work start or stop? In part because it makes the filming process a little bit smoother for me. It means there's less time of me just sitting there staring at my journal, umming and ahhing about what I need to do or need to put in. But also it means that I can make sure that things fit properly before I put pen to paper. As much as I can fix mistakes in my journal, I still don't like having to do it. So I'd much rather know in advance that everything is going to work out, and to get that reassurance, I build myself a map of the layouts that I'm going to be making, and then just follow the map for the setup. This map that I make for myself is done in a digital space. I use Excel, but the template I use also works in Google Sheets and is available in the little shop. I call it my journal spread planner because that's essentially what it helps me do, plan out all my spreads in advance. And because I do it digitally rather than going into the journal and kind of sketching things out in pencil, it means that I don't have to take the time to erase and then reposition things and do all that kind of stuff. I find that setting it up digitally just saves me time. And also, I find that if, you're setting up a layout that's particularly new to you, and you're going in, you're penciling it in, and then going, oh, okay, positioning doesn't really work there, let's erase and try again. If you do too many iterations of that pencil erasing, you kind of start to mess up your pages a little bit, whether it be from being a little aggressive with the eraser and maybe kind of wearing away the surface of the pages, or if you find yourself kind of making contact with the pages with your hands repeatedly. Oftentimes any kind of oils that you have on your skin can transfer to your pages, which means then your pens don't behave in the way that you would otherwise like them to. By doing that pre-planning digitally, I am safeguarding my pages as well as safeguarding my time. As said, the template that I use is over in the little shop and it's linked linked in the description box below. But the spread we're setting up here is for a project that most people won't have, but I do still hope that the structures I'm setting up can be helpful. This one is going to be for planning my Vlogmas content, and the layout has 3 main functional structures. On the left hand side, this is a table where I can keep track of what part in the video making process I'm up to for all of the Vlogmas videos. So from left to right, we have a column to check off when the thing is completely done. We have a larger column to write out what the video is going to be, so just kind of an abridged title so I know what piece of content I'm looking at. And then each of the columns that follow that with the little icons are for idea generation, title writing, doing any scripting I need to do, doing the actual filming, editing, preparing the thumbnail, and then getting it uploaded. By setting it up in this way, it means that I don't necessarily have to work through one piece of content or one video all the way to completion. I can kind of keep track of what part I'm up to for any of the individual videos, especially because I know I'm going to be doing some batch filming days, I'll probably be doing some batch editing days, and knowing where I'm up to for each piece of content so that I can get it completely finished and uploaded for Vlogmas, that's kind of important. If you don't know what Vlogmas is, it's a challenge that I like to do every single year, and that is to release one video on the channel per day in December. That means 31 videos across the month. Some of them are live streams, some of them are members only, but that is still 31 videos I need to plan and prepare for and make and get ready for release. While I could definitely leave all of the work for Vlogmas until December, that is not really doing future me a favor, so I would much rather prepare in advance for that and get some things sorted early. In fact, I have already started preparing the content for Vlogmas. I'm not as far through as I would like, but progress is still progress and I will not snub my nose at it. In terms of the other 2 sections though, down the bottom of the right hand side, we have a section that I'm calling the game plan, which is really just a kind of calendar structure where I can write out which days I'm going to be dedicating more to filming or editing or doing the prep work. And then the space above this is a progress checklist for myself. So I have different video preparation milestones to hit as I prepare the Vlogmas content. For instance, having a little box to check off I've done 1 video, or 8 videos, or 22 videos. I was considering turning it into a progress bar, but because there's going to be 31 videos for Vlogmas, I thought that a checklist system would be a little bit easier. I also didn't want to just have 1 through 31 because then I could just use the list that I have on the left hand side and how many little boxes I've checked off on there, but I do appreciate that this spread is going to keep me organized and keep me going as I work towards getting all of those videos done. Of course, if you want to make sure that you don't miss any of Vlogmas, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I know people have also said they get value out of having notifications turned on, especially for those live streams and being able to join live, or even just knowing when we have a new release on the channel. In terms of timing, given the fact that I did stuff up the game plan section and had to go and put in a separate piece of paper and like redraw that structure out, this spread took about 25 minutes, but it would have taken less time if I didn't stuff up the calendar. It's cool, I know how to fix mistakes. I still prefer not to have to fix mistakes, and the mistake that I did make was because I didn't put it on my map. If it had been on my map, it wouldn't have happened. For reference, the mistake was misnumbering the calendar because I accidentally forgot the number 22. With that one set up though, it is time to flip on over and set up for my next project, which is another one that just needs a simple checklist, and this is going to be a digital declutter. I want to declutter all of my digital spaces, so not just the files that I have on my computer, but also things like bookmarks and social media accounts, going through my passwords and my password manager to consider if there's any that need to be changed because they're not as secure, or possibly online accounts that need to be closed because I just don't use them. Also probably going through my phone, deleting apps that don't really need to be there, I don't get value out of them, and restructuring my homepage. After having done a physical space declutter in Q3, which was very satisfying. We got rid of over 1,000 items from our house in 1 week. I want to bring that kind of same level of satisfaction to my digital spaces, and I know that this checklist is going to be really important for that. When it comes to decluttering a physical space, oftentimes the lack of stuff is a lot more obvious, whereas in a digital space that isn't always the case. Obviously there can be some pretty big metrics of success. For instance, if your desktop is a cluttered mess and just has files everywhere and you can't find anything, sure, going in and tidying that up is going to have a very obvious impact for you. But things like going through my photo archive archive and deleting like double up photos or ones that aren't very flattering or anything that I just realistically don't need. I don't jump into my photos folder all that often, so on a day-to-day basis, I'm not really gonna notice the progress that I've made there. Having this checklist though is gonna very clearly show me the progress that I'm making towards that project. And I am a big believer that if you're working on any goal or any project, having something that very clearly shows the progress you're making is very important. It's the thing that keeps us motivated to work on it. It's the thing that highlights that yes, we are actually getting things done. And even if progress is slow, it is still progress. To make the simple checklist look a little bit nicer, I included a panel of decoration down the side, but given that it is just a simple checklist, this one only took about 3.5 minutes to set up. Following the idea of only letting items take up the amount of space they need though, I dedicated the right-hand side of the spread to a different project, that one being our mini moon, or the mini honeymoon that Vogel and I are taking. If you don't know, Vogel is my partner, or I guess now my husband. I'm still gonna call him my partner though, I just prefer the terminology. But we got married at the end of August, and initially we were going to take a honeymoon in September, but then given some household shenanigans and projects that were probably gonna cost a bit of money, we decided to put off taking any kind of larger trip. We did think that it would be fun to do something though, just a little bit smaller in scale and a little closer to home. For our honeymoon, we've decided we're going to go to Queenstown, and while we have done some things towards it, like booking the flights and the accommodation, there are still other things that need to be booked. So I wanted to have a space dedicated to getting that stuff finalized. Of course, I don't foresee there being a full page worth of tasks, just a few different ones, but I knew I also wanted to have a packing list. And while yes, I am going to be making that digital life list or reference list of the master packing list, when it comes to actually packing my bags though, I still like to have this written in my journal or on a physical list that I can check off as I put things into the bag. I consider the master packing list to be more so a reference that I can use to draw from when I'm making a packing list for a specific trip, so I will be referencing the master packing list to populate this packing list to get myself packed for our mini moon. On to the next spread though, and this is where we actually start to get into what I consider my more day-to-day planning, and that is with a weekly dashboard. Something that I had tried for October was setting up my weekly dashboard first, and then setting up the collection pages for any given project that I was going to work on in that week directly after it. And while I did like that, I think I'm gonna like this system more of having all of those project-based collections up the very front of the setup and then getting into the weekly and daily spaces. Mainly because it is not necessarily assured that I am going to complete a full project in one week. So while I have been tying a project to each week as kind of like a focus, some projects are gonna take a little longer and some might take less time. Following the old structure, I would have done something like the week 1 setup, then the space for the recipe book, then space for daily logs for week 1, and then set up the space for week 2, followed by whatever project I was going to work on in week 2. And while I do like the chronological ordering of that, there is something kind of nice about that in my brain. Another thing that I found was a little bit tricky was then estimating the amount of spaces I was going to need for daily logs, which meant that my daily logs in October got really out of order compared to where my weeklies were. I think that by going with a system of all of the project-based collections first, then the week 1 dashboard, then the week 1 dailies, then the week 2 dashboard, then the week 2 dailies, it'll hopefully make the sequencing of those daily spaces, in comparison to where the weeklies are, just a little bit simpler. As for the structure of my weekly dashboard, this is also changing a little bit as well. While I do still have the same 4 sections, so meals, priorities, my this week or task list, and my routine space, the way I've set some of these up is a little bit different. In particular, the priorities list and the meal plan. Rather than just having simple checklists for those ones, and for the meals having the checklist in the order that the meals would be consumed, so going from top to bottom with Monday breakfast, lunch, dinner, then Tuesday breakfast, lunch, dinner, I've adjusted both of these sections with the Alistair method. So rather than just having a checklist where I check off to say yes, this thing has been done, I instead have additional columns which I can then use to indicate either when I'm scheduling to do something or when it gets completed. Or I guess technically both. I'll end up putting a bullet point or a dot underneath the relevant header or in the relevant column for any given day of the week, with that dot being a placeholder to say this is when I plan on doing this. If I do end up getting it done on that day, or in the case of meals, eating it on that day, I can just cross out that bullet, or if I end up getting that done on a different day, I can then put the cross in that column. I figured that in the case of the meals, this meant that I didn't actually have to take up as much space with my meal plan, because when it comes to breakfast and lunch, I kind of just eat the same thing every day. day, so rather than writing overnight oats 7 times, I can just write it once and cross it off for each day that I have overnight oats. Similar idea for lunch, rather than writing that out 7 times, I can write it out once and cross it off 7 times. As for the priorities list though, having a space to map out when I'm going to do particular priorities, I feel will just help me pace my work a little better. The priorities list is always a section that's dedicated to goal and project work, so specifying this week in particular, what am I going to be doing to work on those goals and projects? By having a dedicated space to pull those tasks into, it means that I end up being a bit more conscious about taking the action steps needed to get my goals and projects done. As for the 2 sections that are going unchanged, the this week or task space and the routine space, these ones also use the Alistair method. With a column for each day of the week, I can map out when I want to get particular tasks done, or in the case of the routines tracker, just check off which days I got those routines completed. I gave myself 6 spaces for habits or routines that I'm trying to build, so an additional 2 compared to October, because I found a couple more things that I wanted to keep track of. In terms of timing, this one took about 15.5 minutes to set up, with that time definitely being increased by doing the second line highlight, but I do love the extra color that it adds to the layout, and it also means that I don't feel the need to go and put boxes around each of the sections for my modules, because I can effectively use wherever those second line highlights start and stop to indicate the space that I've dedicated for those modules. Plus it also increases the readability of the information that I have in there, a little easier to see separate entries or tasks. Of course, the weekly dashboard is great for that kind of start of week organization in terms of meals, priorities, all of that. But when it comes to my daily task lists, I also like to set up some spaces for those. I don't pre-section out how much space any of my daily checklists is going to take though, mainly because not every day is the same. For instance, on Mondays, I know I have a very large list of things, usually because I have laundry and vlog editing as tasks, and I like to have a lot of subtasks for those things. Whereas on a Friday maybe, I don't have as many things to write down. For that reason, setting up my daily list spaces is always quite simple. It's just adding a little bit of decoration to the page because it sparks joy, and it also means that these layouts are gonna better match the other ones I've put in the setup. As we talked about, I like it when things are matchy-matchy, I like it when things are a little bit decorated, and the decoration between each of the pages within a monthly setup all matches. I'm in a habit at the moment of very much focusing my decoration in a top and bottom corner across the spread. So on this one here, I went with the bottom left and the top right, whereas on the next spread, I'll go with the top left and bottom right. I kind of just alternate as I work through. I've been finding recently that I've been using approximately 3 pages or 1.5 spreads for my daily logging for any week. So for week 1, I set up 2 spreads worth of daily log spaces, and then for week 2, I'll only set up 1 spread for daily log spaces. When it comes to figuring out how much space you're going to need for these, it is kind of just an educated guess, but the more time that you do these daily logs and kind of reflect on how much space you needed and kind of predict how much space you're going to need moving forward depending on what you've got going on, you can get a pretty good feel for how much space will be necessary. Whenever I'm in doubt though, I usually err on the side of including a little too much space rather than not enough, because I never want to feel like I have to restrict myself in terms of how many things I'm writing down on my dailies, because then what ends up happening is I feel compelled to just hold all that information in my head when I could be using that brain power to get stuff done. I figure that if I ever have too much space on any daily log section, I can just go fill that with decoration later if I want to. As said, this one doesn't take very long, so it only took about 3.5 to 4 minutes to put the decoration in, that time not including the second spread that also got some decoration. But then it's time to set up the week 2 dashboard. For this one, I went and used the exact same sections, but I do like there to be some visual differences between one week and the next. So given that I use a very modular system, I just rearrange where the modules will be placed. In week 1, we ended up with the routines in the this week section on the right hand page, so for week 2, I brought them over to the left. I also changed the ordering of them, so this time routines is going to go at the top rather than the bottom, and I did a similar thing with the meals and priorities, just reversing the side and the order of those. Because the modules that I'm using are different sizes, this means that the spots I'll have for decoration will also change. So rather than having a large panel of decoration down the right hand side, I'm now going to have that down the left. By moving the meals space down instead of having it at the top, it also meant that I got some decoration space in the bottom right corner. As someone who kind of craves novelty in my planner setups, but also enjoys the stability of having those same structures, or finds them all to be useful and thus wants to continue to include them, this is a nice way to get kind of a happy balance between having things that are novel and having things that are staples. Something that's also good to note that although the first iteration of my weekly dashboard for this setup took about 15.5 minutes to set up, up, this one only took about 14. And that's because I was a little more used to the sizing I was using, a little more used to the decorative style, and even though I was changing up the positioning of things, that general familiarity still translates into less time spent setting up my journal. And knowing this about your setups can be really valuable information, because if you find that setting up your journal is taking you, quote, too long, or longer than you'd like, one of the ways that you can address that is just by using the same layouts time and time again. Because you'll be more familiar with the layouts, it'll end up taking you less time to set up. When you set them up multiple times, it means you're essentially giving yourself practice of how you like those things set up, which means that with each iteration, you have less time spent trying to figure out the spacing or the placement or things like that. What I also find is that by setting these up at the same point in time, rather than, say, setting it up at the start of one week and then the start of the next and then the start of the next, that practice in the moment is still very fresh, so I don't have to re-figure out how to set things up. Plus, if we're thinking about other time-saving techniques, given the fact that I do like to be a little more decorative with my layouts, I like to use, stickers and tapes and papers, I'm also saving time outside of the setup with not having to go and recollect all those materials. I've got them all here, I've got them right in front of my face, so I'll just use them all at once, all at the same time, rather than spending time, putting them away, and then having to get them back out next week, and then putting them away again, so on and so forth. Of course, I also needed some space for daily logs for week 2, but I only included one spread of it this time, because I'll probably end up using some of the space from the week 1 daily log spots, but given that I like to do cyclic planning, and a cycle lasts 4 weeks, come the end of week 2, we're going to be at the mid-cycle point, which is a great opportunity to do a check-in with your goals, along with aiming to do those weekly priorities lists so I know what I need to work on for my goals in any given week, and also keeping track on those kind of larger pages or bigger collections that are specifically for one type of goal or project. Having semi-regular reflection sessions so that I can kind of really highlight the progress that I'm making towards my goals very much helps keep me, 1, accountable to getting things done, and 2, feeling positive that I'm making progress. Because as we've said, small progress is still progress. And if we don't give ourselves the opportunity to really relish the fact that we're making it and highlight the fact that we're getting things done, oftentimes we can get to the end of a day, a week, a year, just kind of thinking, what have I even achieved? I never want that to be the case. I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time. And doing these mid-cycle check-ins is just a really nice way to highlight to myself that my time is being spent meaningfully. I'm getting where I want to go. This is another layout that isn't going to take up the full spread, but I just let it take up as much space as it needs. And it has 5 main sections, those being wins, routines, progress, challenges, and responses. The win section is for any kind of outcomes that have come about from working on my goals and projects. These feel like kind of bigger milestone moments, or maybe like a complete accomplishment of a goal or project. They don't have to be massive things, but they feel a little bit more akin to a soft or final finish, as opposed to the progress section, which is more so just to highlight the steps that I've taken towards something, even if it's not very outcome based. When it comes to whether I put something in the wins or the progress category, it really just depends on feeling, and also about the way that you frame it to yourself. Something that is a win for one person might just feel like progress for another, whereas the reverse is also true. In terms of the routine space though, this is where I list out all of those routines that I've had on my routines trackers, and write down how many times I successfully completed them across the last 2 weeks. Notably, the aim here is to get a number as close to 14 as possible, because that means that I did it every single day, but normally if I've even got over 10, I'm still feeling pretty good about it. If something's sitting lower than a 7 though, that's maybe an area I want to focus on a little bit more. Consider what I could do to make completing that routine a little easier for myself, or what I can do to make it more likely that I accomplish it. As for the challenges and responses sections though, I like to put these ones together in a kind of table view because I see them as being very related. Essentially what I want to be able to do is write down any challenges that have held me back from working on my goals or working on my projects, and then consider what responses I had to those challenges, whether they were intentional or just kind of reactionary. This isn't meant to be a space of judgment, this isn't a space to kind of like beat myself up, but more so just reflect on whether the responses I've had to the challenges have been helping me or hindering me. There are definitely other sections you can include in a reflection space like this, but I like to keep it fairly simple just with these 5, and that means that the rest of the space is going to be left open for any kind of daily logging I might want to do, or a brain dump or a mind unwind, whatever feels necessary at the time. Flipping back so that we can flip through, I'm really looking forward to using these layouts, Not only because it was an opportunity to celebrate fall, given the fact that it's spring here and so it's really the only way I could do it, but also because I'm just curious to see what the impact of having all of the project-based pages at the front rather than interdispersed between my weeklies is gonna have for my personal organization. More than that though, I'm actually just really eager to get working on these projects, and some of them I have actually already started on. I'm working on all of these and more as part of the Change Your Life Challenge, including goals related to physical and mental health, learning, and organization. And while what I've put into my journal is really just the planning for taking action on these things, if you wanted to see how I do take that action to get things done, then this playlist is the next one to check out. That one contains all of the videos for the Change Your Life Challenge so far, including fully reorganizing my office, setting up my second brain in Notion, and a bunch of other goals and projects. So click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.